Hey YouTube, there's a quick observation on getting a replacement MiG guns. This is the factory Lincoln for my 3200 that I replaced out only because I wanted a longer lead of 15 foot, not 10. This is nothing wrong with this gun, it works great, but I did opt for an HTP. This is a China gun that I bought for my Harbor Freight prior to buying the Lincoln. Actually, I'm very impressed with the China products that are coming out, given that I've taken apart the HTP and realized that the components are not anything spectacular, given that it's 3 times the cost of this for a China gun. This thing, if you go buy it on special, it's like 120 bucks. Anywhere from 120 to 150. You get the China one for 45 bucks shipped, and as opposed to the 120 plus shipped. Given the components, if you're not familiar with the way that these guns are put together, this is a brass block for the gas. This screws the brass block on, but you can flip this cable, and the way that they're made is the back end looks exactly like this. I'm not showing the back end so much because they're all for your particular type of welder. This is just kind of a generic video on the 2 different types of guns, and the components, like I mentioned, don't appear to be that superior in an HTP. The only nod I would give to HTP is they have a more positive trigger, and by that I mean it's a more resistant trigger, and I like that as opposed to the China trigger, which has more resistance now, but the travel is the issue. The way that they put this together is different from HTP, and I think they do cheap out on this a bit, but the principle is essentially the same. When you press the trigger, you're connecting both wires together, and that's what feeds your motor or your wire feeder. The plastic is comparable on both. In fact, I do like the China plastic feel better than the HTP. And as far as compared to the factory gun, there's nothing wrong with that factory gun. I like it, and I like everything about it, actually. I wish they made it in 15 footer. Anyhow, my conclusion is simply, having used both guns, this particular China gun, I bought it for a Harbor Freight welder that I have, is flux core only. Again, this is to replace out the factory Lincoln, but my conclusion is that if I had to do it all over again, I would have saved my money here. I just bought another China gun. I had heard a lot about HTP and their quality and the superiority of their guns, and I'm not finding it. Not compared to what China's putting out. And I could have lived with a $45 replacement China gun with this quality and saved the $80+ that I ended up spending on this. So, one other thing that I'll note that I was a little disappointed with on the HTP gun was the fitment, and I'll show you on my Lincoln. And that is, you see that red tape right there? That is because there's a gap, and in that gap you see the brass block that's connected to the power lead of the internals, and it's a hot lead basically. So if you actually went in there and touched it when it was on, you could shock yourself, or if you touched metal to it. And I called HTP, and they said, well, we make it that way because we build a larger brass piece, which is fine, except though that you would think that they would have that covered, or at least protected, rather than suggesting that you put electrical tape around it. That just is just piss poor to me when you're spending this kind of money for supposedly a top quality gun. And that leads me to believe that the HTPs are overpriced and not worth the value that they claim to be. Just my 2 cents. Hope you got something out of it. Until next time. By the way, these are the nozzles. Just a quick note. This is HTPs. This is the factory Lincoln. The best one, in my opinion, is the factory Lincoln. And this is the China version. Nothing to speak of on any of them except for the factory Lincoln. Just a quick note on that. So, till next time.